Her hands moved in darkness before dawn. The water jar was heavy, empty. Why did this moment determine not just her family's survival, but her entire place in the world? A young woman rises in complete darkness. Her movements are practiced, silent. Children sleep on woven mats nearby. Her husband stirs but doesn't wake. 8 years of marriage have taught them both this rhythm. Before the first pale light touches the eastern hills, she has begun the sequence of tasks that will consume the next 16 hours. Bare feet find the familiar path across packed earth. The ceramic water jar weighs nothing now, but the return journey will test her shoulders. The village well waits in pre-dawn stillness. This walk must happen now, before heat builds, before other demands make it impossible. She draws her woolen cloak close and steps into the night. This is mourning for women in first-century Palestine. Just immediate necessities that keep families alive. Water in heavy jars, grain ground into flour, bread shaped and baked, children fed, washed, instructed, animals tended, each task essential, each hour accounted for, each day balanced between family needs and physical endurance. Stay with us, because understanding how these women truly lived reveals why the gospel encounters with women carried such profound weight, and why their faithfulness shaped the foundations of our faith. For centuries, we have viewed biblical women through distant assumptions about their experience, but the reality was far more intricate and demanding than we often recognize. The path to the well winds through narrow streets, cloaked in shadow. Her feet know every stone, every channel carved by winter rains. This route has been walked by her mother-in-law, her grandmother, countless women whose names are forgotten, but whose daily faithfulness sustained the generations. The pattern is as reliable as sunrise, as necessary as breathing. At the well, she encounters other women beginning their day's labor. Words are few, too much work awaits lengthy conversation. But information passes quickly. Which child is ill? What family needs help? Whether news has come from distant relatives. These brief exchanges create networks of knowledge that operate quietly but prove essential when crisis strikes. The filled jar weighs heavily as she returns home. By the time she crosses her threshold, the sky shows the first gray of coming dawn. Her family stirs. The precious water serves first for morning washing, required by religious law, then for mixing bread dough that forms the foundation of every meal. Nothing wastes. Each drop serves multiple purposes before darkening the earthen floor. Her husband emerges to begin his day's work. Children wake with immediate needs: washing, feeding, clothing, instruction. Her eldest daughter, now 11, helps with the baby while learning skills for her own future household. The middle child observes his father's work before returning to help with tasks requiring no particular strength but contributing to family welfare. This mourning pattern governs women's lives throughout Palestinian society. Constant motion, endless responsibility, deep understanding that family survival depends upon their skill, endurance, and wisdom. When a young girl reached 15 without a husband, whispers began. Her father's debts had grown. Potential suitors looked elsewhere. She spent longer hours grinding grain, spinning thread, helping neighbors, anything to demonstrate her value. Marriage meant alliance, security, survival. Her worth measured in domestic skills and childbearing potential. The cultural framework shaping women's lives had developed over centuries of tradition, religious law, and harsh necessity. Women's roles were understood through the lens of family preservation and community continuity. Consider one bride, married at 13, to a man chosen by her father. Their first conversation happened 3 days before the wedding. Love and compatibility were hoped for, but considered fortunate outcomes rather than essential prerequisites. The union benefited both extended families. his need for alliance, hers for economic security. Marriage arrangements involved careful negotiations between families, evaluating reputation, economic stability, social standing. The young woman and her intended often had limited interaction beforehand. Large families were economically necessary and socially expected. Children provided labor, care for aging parents, continuation of family names and properties. Another woman, married 6 years without conceiving, faced mounting pressure. Neighbors pitied her. Her husband's family questioned her worth. Her mother-in-law suggested divorce. Barrenness meant not only personal disappointment, but social marginalization, sometimes the dissolution of marriage itself. Within marriage, women's lives became largely defined by childbearing and child-rearing. Motherhood brought authority within the domestic sphere, but immense responsibility. Sons required preparation for eventual household leadership. Daughters needed training in complex skills of household management, textile production, food preparation, childcare. Yet within these demanding expectations, women developed sophisticated strategies for influence operating through relationship and wisdom, rather than direct authority. A skilled wife learned to guide her husband's decisions through careful timing, persuasive presentation of information, demonstration of sound judgment. When one woman's husband planned to sell their best goat to pay taxes, she waited until evening, after he'd eaten well. Then she mentioned quietly that their neighbor had offered better terms for the grain harvest. She showed him calculations scratched in the dirt. By morning, he had decided on his own. He believed to keep the goat and negotiate with the neighbor instead. Her influence was invisible but decisive. The daily experience of women was shaped by tasks beginning before dawn and continuing past sunset, each essential for family survival and community stability. Grain required daily grinding. The stones were heavy, the motion repetitive, the process time-consuming. Yet this work couldn't be postponed. Families ate bread or went hungry, and bread came only through patient labor, transforming kernels into flour, flour into dough, dough into loaves, sustaining life. Cooking happened over fires requiring constant attention. Wood was precious, used economically, while providing adequate heat for baking and preparing legumes that supplemented family diet. Timing was crucial. Bread ready when children needed feeding. Fires never left unattended. Water management demanded careful calculation. The jar from the well served drinking, cooking, cleaning, washing. Each use planned and measured, because the next well trip might not be possible for hours. In Palestinian summer heat, water became more precious than silver. Textile work filled moments between urgent tasks. Women spun thread from wool or flax, while nursing babies or watching fires. Skilled hands kept spindles turning, producing thread, becoming cloth, becoming garments, essential for warmth and modesty. This work interrupted for immediate needs, but resumed whenever possible. Childcare wove through every activity. Infants nursed on demand. Toddlers required safety supervision. Older children needed instruction as they learned future responsibilities. Women developed remarkable abilities, managing multiple demands simultaneously. The luxury of single-task focus simply didn't exist. The economics of survival meant nothing wasted, everything used efficiently. Food scraps fed animals. Worn clothing mended repeatedly until unusable, then repurposed. Broken pottery repaired when possible or adapted. Water used for washing hands, saved for cleaning floors. Women's movements and activities within Palestinian society operated under carefully observed boundaries that reflected deep beliefs about honor, purity, and social order. When a woman entered the marketplace alone, eyes followed her. Women could buy supplies, sell household products, but such activities required maintaining appropriate behavior avoiding unnecessary interaction with men outside family circles. Her cloak covered her head. Her voice remained low. Her eyes stayed downcast. One misstep could damage not only her reputation, but her entire household standing. Public spaces, markets, synagogues, community gatherings were male-dominated. Women's participation carefully regulated. The legal system treated women as family unit members rather than independent individuals. They couldn't own property in their own names, enter business contracts without male oversight, serve as witnesses in legal proceedings. Consider one widow. When her husband died, his debts became her burden, but his property went to his brother. She could appeal to religious authorities for basic support, but legal ownership remained beyond her reach. Her testimony about her husband's verbal promises carried little weight in disputes. Marriage laws provided some protections within a framework, assuming male authority and female dependence. A woman's father negotiated her marriage contract, transferring legal responsibility to her husband. Divorce remained primarily male prerogative, though exceptional circumstances allowed women to appeal for protection from abuse or abandonment. Business activities available to women involved extensions of domestic skills, spinning textiles, preparing foods for sale, midwifery services, relating to traditional female knowledge. These provided modest income, but rarely led to economic independence or significant wealth accumulation. Yet within constraints, women found meaningful ways to exercise influence and control over matters affecting family welfare and community stability. Religious life for women involved complex participation, acknowledging their essential role in maintaining household faithfulness while limiting public religious activities. Each Friday evening, women across Palestine prepared for Sabbath, all cooking, cleaning, preparation completed before sunset. They lit special Sabbath lamps, arranged ritual foods, created the domestic atmosphere, making Sabbath rest possible for entire families. Their work enabled others' worship while limiting their own ability to cease labor. Synagogue attendance was expected, but regulated. Women sat separately, listened to readings and instruction, but couldn't participate in leading worship, reading scripture, or engaging in theological discussions, shaping community religious understanding. Their presence valued, devotion recognized, voices largely silent in public settings. Festival celebrations involved women in crucial preparation, special foods marking religious occasions, family gatherings around sacred meals, traditions making festivals meaningful for children and community. Their contributions, essential even when invisible. Purity laws related to menstruation, childbirth, other aspects of women's biological experience, created regular periods of restriction from normal religious and social activities. These restrictions sometimes provided relief from constant domestic responsibilities, opportunities for rest and reflection. Prayer and private devotion offered women spiritual expression, not subject to same restrictions as public participation. They developed rich interior spiritual lives through personal prayer, meditation, study of religious traditions, passed through networks of women teaching each other what men learned in formal settings. Religious education within families relied heavily on mothers teaching children basic religious knowledge, moral principles, spiritual practices during daily interactions. While women couldn't engage formal religious scholarship, they served as primary faith transmitters to each new generation through countless conversations, corrections, demonstrations of faithful living. Within this carefully structured world of defined roles and limited opportunities, Jesus' interactions with women departed significantly from normal social patterns in ways that would have been immediately noticed and remembered. The Samaritan woman encountered Jesus at Jacob's well during midday heat, an unusual time for drawing water, suggesting she avoided other village women. Their conversation violated multiple boundaries. A Jewish man speaking privately with a Samaritan woman, discussing theological matters with someone whose testimony carried no legal weight, engaging in extended dialogue about personal and religious topics, typically reserved for men. Yet Jesus not only spoke with her, but revealed his identity in ways he hadn't yet shared openly with others. When she returned to her village, her testimony brought many to meet him. Despite her gender, despite her reputation, despite social expectations about women's voices, the woman with the hemorrhage had lived 12 years with bleeding that rendered her ritually impure and socially isolated. Her condition made her unclean according to religious law. Anyone she touched also became impure. Her decision to reach for Jesus in the crowd was both desperate and dangerous. Desperate, because conventional healing had failed. Dangerous, because discovery would bring public shame and condemnation. Jesus' response demonstrated compassion transcending ritual boundaries while acknowledging her faith publicly. Daughter, he called her, a term of honor, not shame. After his resurrection, Jesus appeared first to women who had remained faithful through crucifixion and burial. These women, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, others, became first witnesses to the central event of Christian faith. In a culture where women's testimony carried limited legal weight, this choice was remarkable. Their commission to tell the male disciples what they had seen reversed normal patterns of religious authority and testimony. His other interactions reinforced these patterns. Mary and Martha welcomed him with significant hospitality. When Martha complained about Mary choosing learning over service, Jesus defended Mary's decision to receive instruction rather than merely serve. He included women among his traveling followers, accepted their financial support, healed them without regard to ritual purity, and taught them as legitimate recipients of religious instruction. These interactions weren't systematic attempts to transform social structures, but represented consistent expressions of compassion that recognized women's spiritual capacity and valued their participation in the community Jesus was creating. The young woman who began her day in darkness understood both the constraints of her world and the hope offered by one who saw beyond them. Her daily work remained essential, even when invisible. Her faith was meaningful, even when unexpressed in public settings. Her wisdom operated through relationships and quiet influence. When she encountered Jesus, whether directly or through shared accounts, she would have recognized immediately the unusual nature of his interactions with women. Here was someone who welcomed their participation, honored their contributions, and saw their spiritual worth. The Christ who spoke with women at wells welcomed them as learners, healed them without condemnation, and chose them as witnesses had lived within the same constraints these women faced. He understood their courage, their faith, and their devotion to God, despite social limitations. The women who followed Jesus made carefully considered choices to embrace hope for a community where spiritual worth transcended social categories. Their faithfulness, demonstrated in both daily service and extraordinary commitment, became foundational to the early Christian movement. They understood that true significance came not from public recognition, but from wholehearted devotion to the one who sees and values every act of faithfulness. And if this exploration has deepened your understanding of the world these women inhabited and the faith they demonstrated, we invite you to continue discovering with us the historical foundations that illuminate Scripture and strengthen faith. Until our next journey into the past, may these ancient examples of faithful service inspire your own walk with God.